right, and welcome back to Heroes Hype Amateur Series week number 87. I am Bahamut, one of the casters this evening. With me is GL Phoenix. How you doing, man?
I'm doing very well, thank you, Bahamut. It's an interesting situation to be casting North American teams and players while all the way over here in Australia, but I'm very excited to be here, and it's going to be a very interesting evening.
Oh, I'm very, very excited. I mean, I was just peeking, we kind of peeked over at the bracket. We were looking at who's going to be where, and like, I'm seeing some of these names and I'm just like, ooh, there's some big names in this bracket, but we are actually going to be going into Modo Gaming versus, and I'm going to give it a shot, Icterus team?
I believe Icterus or Icterus, whichever takes your fancy at the time, it should be okay. But yeah, it was got a lot of interesting names. I mean, I'm probably going to have to be helped through a lot of these because, as I said, from Australia, I'm not really as familiar with a lot of these names as I believe you would be. So
it's okay. I just give my best shot at it, and someone in Twitch chat will correct us. There we go.
That's usually the way to do it. But yeah, it is going to be, what was it, Modo versus Icterus.
And it's gonna be a pretty strong matchup between these two teams. They're probably going through their coin flip, map ban, and all that right now. But while all that's happening, just give us a little bit of a rundown of yourself, what you do.
Well, as I mentioned, I am from Australia. I've been commentating esports on and off for about 3 or 4 years. Moved over to Heroes of Storm towards its release, so been doing that for quite a while. But yeah, only just now really starting to get into the big swing of things, and yeah, just wanted to keep this casting thing going because it's a hell of a lot of fun.
I agree. I any chance I can get to get my hands on some casting, I'm always very, very excited. And I'm also peeking over at Twitch chat and just, they're talking about double supports. I mean, any sort of feelings on that? I mean, that's a huge topic of discussion right now.
Absolutely, because one thing that's going to be incredibly intriguing to see over the course of today is that we're on the latest patch with all of those nerfs to the supports. So we'll have to see how teams have reacted to it, considering they've only had like half a day to work with it. So we have to see if they're going to just resort back to what they know and are more comfortable with, and then trying to work out what works and what doesn't, or if they are going to be bold and try and put together some compositions that they feel are going to be the best fit on this current patch. So it's going to be very intriguing to see what happens.
Exactly. I mean, a lot of these across the board are just they kind of summed it up with about a 5% change. But real quickly, just got to kind of just got to shout out to Nelstar15 for the 4-month resub. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it. And just on a note of the subs for this channel, they go towards the supporting the stream as well as this community. So the subs are always well appreciated, and you're putting money into such a great. I mean, this is week 87 of HeroesHype Amateur Series. I mean, that's a long running series to do it almost every week.
That is a lot of weeks, and yeah, I'm very happy to be finally able to jump in and get involved myself. So yeah, it's a blast to work with these guys, and these games are always just so much fun. So looks like Modo also banned Warhead Junction. So looks like. What do you think map-wise, in a best-of-1 situation, do you go for a map where you're like, all right, we've got a really good team fight, or do you go to a map where we've got like a lot of good control? Well, that's a very interesting question because, yeah, especially for best-of-1, it's much more different than, say, a best-of-2, best-of-3 that you'd probably see in a lot of other kind of events. Best-of-1, I very much understand getting rid of Warhead because that can be a map where you get the good draft, you just win it. No matter what, you just win it. So getting that one off the board, going towards something that's more neutral, something like, say, Dragonshy or even Infernal Shrines, those maps are very just neutral. And if you feel as though you are better than your opponent, you can just try and go towards those more standard maps and just outclass your opponents.
And really quick shout out to Funky for the Twitch sub. Thank you so much. But actually, on that note, you were saying Dragonshire and Infernal Shrines, and they are very good maps. I mean, the compositions you can build, you can go into either of you can go into more of like we'll play around the objective, or we'll play more a little bit more aggressive, or maybe a macro control. But they did ban out Infernal Shrines, so it looks like Modo is actually picking up BOE. And this is one of the things that I was curious. I was going to maybe kind of poke about as we were going through these map bans here. Battlefield of Eternity, like it can be one of those maps where if you've just got the composition, you'll just win out every time, and those late game immortals just push.
They can be very devastating. And as you mentioned previously, do you want to go for those team fighting compositions and team fighting style of map? Battlefield of Eternity can lend towards that kind of play style where you are fighting around these two neutral or objectives in the middle of the map, where you have a lot of neutral space to work around, and that can be a path for some of these teams to go towards. So it'll be very interesting to see, especially with a lot of these changes on the new patch, where these teams are going to go with the draft.
That is true. I mean, looking at things like Zul Jin, he's been a big. Actually, he's actually something we see on this map. And with the changes that came into him, I'm wondering if that's actually going to affect his priority here. I mean, we'll see. And then the other thing too is Hammer. I mean, this is a map in the past. I mean, I'm a silver scrub, so maybe I'm speaking for myself here, but in the past we have seen Hammer on this map where you can kind of pick her up and get that poke as well as some zone, but there are, very easy counters you can pick up to it.
Yeah, there are, but there's also pretty easy things you can pair with that Hammer to make sure she's as safe as possible. And there are a lot of nooks and crannies around those immortals where the Hammer can really set up and make it really obnoxious, make it an obnoxious zone for the opponents to try and deal with. And with a lot of these nerfs to supports, things like shielding of, say, a Zarya or even a Medivh can really rise in priority or rise in value when you see all of these healing numbers start getting knocked down a bit.
That is exactly. I think we might see a shift there. I haven't really looked at it in that light of just considering, like what are the other alternatives where like it doesn't need to be a support. I mean, even in the past, we've seen Zarya be kind of played in that, I'm going to shield you and protect you kind of thing.
Yeah, she almost fulfills a secondary support role because she does have a lot of those shielding. She can be very protective in the way she's played, and she also can just sit in front sit in the front line and just say to your opponents, you're not coming in here, you are not going to be touching this back line, and they're just going to be an obnoxious pest. And similar to a Medivh, you are just going to be just sitting away at the back line, just poking away, and also just making it so difficult for your opponents to really get a lot of that damage to land. So those are options that could come up here, and Battlefield of Eternity is a map where Medivh and the vision that he gives could be very influential throughout the early to mid game.
That's true. I mean, if we do see some sort of, dive composition, you could, pick up something like Greymane, Rhaegar, Diablo, and then, you can maybe, even then, like, you don't have to pick the Medivh, but if you pick it up, you've got this initial dive, then when they're retreating, you've got the portal for the, the follow-up as well. I mean, this is just random theory crafting, but I mean, obviously the big thing here to also consider is that Rhaegar I mentioned, he doesn't really have that number one talent that, everyone went for because it was so strong. I mean, soloing camps.
Yeah, he was essentially a jungler, to take a term from other MOBAs, but he was able to solo. It's a very apt term to use for it because he was able to solo camp so efficiently. He was able to clear waves so efficiently as a support. And when a support is able to have so much utility outside of just the healing, cleansing, and all the utility that comes along with just the support kit, it got a little bit out of control. So although it is a rather significant hit to his power, I feel as though it was kind of necessary to a point.
That's true. I'm just so, because like I'm not a big support player, so you know, like I understand, like I try and understand all the roles because obviously when you cast, you want to try and understand all that. And it's like, when I see all the numbers go, like I look at the numbers and I'm just seeing like, well, that's not a huge amount, but like, see, the thing is like, I don't play healer. So like when they change other heroes, like, you know, like when Murden got changed, you know, like when I played him, I was like, oh, he still feels like very good. Like they didn't change him to the point where it's like, I need to relearn this hero. And a lot of my friends who do play support, they're like, that's how they literally feel about the entire change. It's just like, it doesn't feel like they're going to be playing the same hero anymore. And the entire playstyle for them has changed. And that's the thing that I think is upsetting a lot of people, is that you have to kind of learn the entire role potentially over again.
Well, the thing with the whole double support matter, and what I feel a lot of people were having a lot of gripes with, is that the double support allowed players to position poorly and not get overly punished for it, because you had two supports to give so much healing, so much shielding, so much utility.
That's true.
Back up your bad decisions. Now that there's not that easy safety net, I mean, sure, we could potentially see some double support, because I'm not sure if these teams would have adapted as quickly to the patch just yet. It would probably fall back to some comfort. But
right.
Is this having that less of a easy safety net is going to get a lot of players and teams caught out a little bit more than what we have been used to seeing over the past couple of months. And I think that is going to be healthy in the long run. But it's just a little bit harsh just to look at those patch notes and just see just drops of 5% on so many. It just feels bad.
That is the big thing. And you actually made a really good point there. And like that's a phenomenal point, actually, is that it did allow people to make a lot of bad positioning, and you could really get away with almost anything. Like that's a very good point that I personally, like, I've overlooked, because I've always looked at it as just like, you can just fight forever, but then sometimes that fight isn't a good idea, but you can, because you have double support.
Exactly.
And that's just covering up your I'm glad you brought that up. But going into this, on the left-hand side, we're going to have Modo, and on the right, we're going to have Icterus.
All right, and we'll have to keep that one in mind as we get into it. It is going to be Icterus with the first ban. We'll have to see, do they just go for maybe like a Garrosh, which is one of those standard Hero League bans, which I see a hell of a lot, just really annoying to deal with, can catch a lot of teams out off guard. But then again, if you go into more organized teams, the Garrosh is not nearly as much of a problem, because you're coordinating with your team. You know, if someone is going to get caught out and flipped around, the rest of the team is going to be there to follow up on that. So we'll have to see where they're going with this first ban, and they're actually going to be hovering over the Sylvanas, which is a rather interesting one, but does make sense for the map.
And the other thing to note here, and now, no, the camera changes and all that did not happen still yet. I was just like, did the camera change? Because I was going to think about, you know, like ammo on the fort was one of the things I was going to mention, but I was like, no, I think that comes in the December patch, I believe, with Hanzo.
Yes, and also the change to the way healing globes work, where they become neutral after a certain amount of time. But yeah, those are not in yet. This is just a blanket hammering onto supports just for now. We'll have to see how that goes once we get those next big gameplay patches, and how those alongside the support changes will impact the way even laning works.
Oh yeah, no, I think we're going to get a nice interesting shakeup to the game. But as we kind of talked about, Garrosh is going to be picked up first here for Icterus. I mean, it's good because you know, you talk about coordination and all that. The other thing to consider in this situation, and it's something that I kind of hear some of my friends talk about in their teams, is, you know, you have to respect the Garrosh range. Like, you just have to respect his range, and you have to play around it. And also, you know, learning his cooldowns is a big thing to make sure you're kind of keeping in mind of, like, he just used pull, you know, all he has is toss, or, you know, he's used both because he tossed a minion. Now we go in for that fight. We've got, you know, X amount of time. So it's little things you can like pick up. Like, for example, whenever you see that Stitches hook, 16 seconds every single time, then you just prepared for it. So little things you can pick up into your game that also kind of help you stay safe and stay alive.
Exactly. And now we're seeing it's Modo on the left, who have picked up ETC and the Greyman. Very stable picks. The ETC, another one of those heroes that if you're overextended, you are going to get punished incredibly hard. He has such easy and efficient crowd control with that power slide. Just really makes it easier to lock down a target and gives enough time for the follow-up to come in. And Greymane is one of those heroes that can follow up on CC quite well and is also very good for the map in his race on the Immortals.
I mean, what I really love that Modo did here is that before they go into the ban phase, they're not really showing much of their draft. They're not showing, because they could be a dive comp. They could not. They could just play around the objective and just be, you know, a control passive and just play around the objective, get a couple picks when the team, you know, overextends. It's a lot of that. And the other thing to note too is that they could pick up the Greymane for that solo lane. We haven't seen it in a very long time, but at least I haven't seen a lot of Greymane solo lane. He's typically on a map like this in the 4-man. But it's just something to consider here is just there's a lot of they don't show where they're going with their draft, so it's going to be kind of hard to ban towards that. I mean, they could just focus a healer, but either way, exactly. I talked a lot about this, but either Rhaegar and Zul'jin, that's the other thing to note too.
Yeah, just going back to that point about Modo's first two picks, it is very flexible. It's not, as you mentioned, not showing too much. It allows them to move in either direction depending on how the rest of the draft and the rest of the bans go. But yes, moving on to the Rhaegar and the Zul'jin, both of them.
Yeah, we have to note that too.
Yeah, this is the current patch. Zul'jin has taken a bit of a wailing upon with that balance bat, taking a bit of damage off, a bit of his spell power has been lost, and a whole bunch of his talents getting, I believe, just a little bit tuned because he was.
Yeah, I have it over on my side over here, and it's a lot of just like adjusting and tuning. Like it's you know. Reduction, increased, you know, a lot of the words that you don't want to see on a hero that you probably enjoy playing. But it looks like
just very intrigued to see it picked up so early on. Really, still wanting to, or at least still believing that it has a lot of value. And the Rhaegar, we were mentioning it much earlier, doesn't have that lightning bond talent at level 1. Did also, I believe, copped a nerf and as with the rest of the supports, but still quite a strong support. We'll have to see how it, or if they do end up going with a secondary support to go with that, or if they will just go with the solo healer of the Rhaegar. But now we're getting to the second bans. The Sonya taken away on the side by Modo, whereas the what's his name
Sonya's, again? Icterus team.
That's them. Yeah, and taking away the Stukov.
It's not a bad idea at all. He's a very versatile hero, and I think he's a very good healer, especially in a map like this, and as well as just his overall zoning. And it's just he's a very good tool for the team that they're currently building, and to take it away is a very smart ban. So, and then the other thing I wanted to note here is Sonya was considered and is at least to me, I consider her very, very strong in the solo lane, and to ban it out, even after she did get that slight reduction on the poison spear, which I've heard through so many different channels and everything, like, please just take poison spear down a little bit, just a little bit. Yeah. And they took 25% off, which is great. I honestly haven't looked at it myself. I have not had a chance to literally just test out the 25% reduction. I assume it's going to be kind of more in the middle, and maybe she's just going to be kind of tuned a little bit more where she can't be that much more of a bully.
Yeah, she was still continued to be very strong in that solo lane, be that very strong bruiser. She still has a lot of those strengths, considering the poison spear was the only thing that got touched, and that was essentially just you become an assassin when you get in on that back line and just blast someone down. So she still has a lot of those strengths. I very much understand that ban away of the Sonya, but now as we're getting into the next round of picks, Modo pick up the Artanis, I believe, to go into that solo lane, and also having another hero in their lineup that can do a decent amount of damage to that Immortal with that amateur opponent talent at level 1. And the Kharazim as a support will have to, but they're leaving their last pick quite open.
Double global. That's very interesting. The other thing, so I really like the Kharazim because he can take block, which I think will actually potentially really mess up Zul'jin. And Falstad, depending on his build, it could affect him as well. But overall, that bright. Okay, this is interesting.
Very interesting. So we do have just the solo support Kharazim with a decent amount of damage coming out of the Greymane and the Lunara, versus we do have the double global. And also one thing to note is that they are still going with that double support, with the Brightwing and also the Rhaegar. So they're still going to be going with that despite all the nerfs that we've just had onto all those supports. We'll have to see how it goes, and it's actually just going to be the solo warrior of the Garrosh. So we'll have to see if they're going to be able to stick around in these fights with much less healing numbers behind them.
It's a lot on Savo here to do this. This is going to be, I think it's going to be I really think it's going to be an uphill battle because Kharazim, yes, I think he is strong, but I don't know if I've seen him run as a solo support in I honestly can't remember.
It has been quite a while, but one thing we may see coming out of the HDC is the Prog Rock talent at level 1 to try and just supplement some of that healing once he gets all those regen globes and gets that online. So that could be an option for Modo to go with to try and shore up some of those healing numbers. And to be honest, like Artanis, he can be really annoying to deal with all those shields coming out from his passive if they're going to go for those extended brawls. So they have ways for them to stay alive in these fights. It's just a matter of, will it be enough?
That's absolutely correct. And we'll see. We'll see in about 2 minutes. But on the left-hand side, we are going to have Modo Gaming with Bronker on the Greymane, Enigmatic on the Lunara, Wait on that ETC, Savo on that Kharazim, and rounding out the team, Strange Goat will be on that Artanis.
And on the red side, we have Icterus team. We have Roro on the Falstad. We have Nox on the Rhaegar. We have Invindicator on the Zorgian, Jack on Brightwing, and Voidborn on the Garrosh.
All right, and it looks like they're actually going to go ahead and go into a 5-man in this bottom lane right at the start. Granted, they do have the Falstad who can just fly right up into top, and maybe getting a little bit of damage in this fight here could be beneficial. And actually, just really quickly, sorry, is Falstad going in for the mage build here for that hammer?
Yes, he has picked up the Gathering Storm, and I believe that is why he did come down to maybe try and pick up some of those early stacks onto that quest hunt, just to get that little bit of a head start. But now that they've realized that they're not really going to be getting too much out of that, he is going to be flying back up to top to catch that wave, not really losing out too much in the way of experience so far.
It's not going to be anything crazy, but the thing is, on a map like this, I gotta talk about it. Actually pulling into ECC, he does slide through the team. Looks like a little damage will go out here. Not gonna be anything too crazy, but just on a map like this where you actually want to stack up the season marksman stacks and then put the damage onto the immortal, I feel like that's going to be stronger than stacking up in a solo lane against an Artanis. He's sitting at 1 right now, and we're about to hit immortal in about 30 or so seconds.
Yeah, it is an interesting decision to go for the more mage style build. It will actually, they do get a nice flip down onto the Kharazim, but one thing we see out of this lineup is that the two that are moving forward, the ETC and the Kharazim, they do have ways to get themselves out of that. So nice positioning on the side of Modo to kind of nullify a lot of that early advantage coming out from that Garrosh.
Exactly, and it looks like in that top lane, the Artanis did kind of push Falstad back enough where he had to go back. I did see the flight burned into that top lane, but at this point, it looks like we do have the majority of Modo Gaming jumping onto the Red Immortal, and it looks like a Harris team will go ahead and do the same. And the burn on the side of Modo is a lot faster at this point.
Absolutely. They've got the Greymane, who, once in Worgen form, will start slashing away very quickly. The Artanis, as mentioned, with the amateur opponent. So much more damage to those Immortals, and they are going to end up getting the first Immortal just out of pure racing ability on the Immortal. Both teams just went in for it, and Modo Gaming are going to be able to have the first shot with the Immortal. We'll have to see how much they are able to get out of it.
And that's the thing, is typically first Immortals, they're not the most powerful thing on earth, but at this point, this is very early and it's 4 talents. It's nothing huge, but it's 4 talents. That's still an advantage against the team, and they need to kind of just play a little bit safe. Don't want to lose out too much or potentially stagger deaths, because then you'll be looking at losing a fort rather than just maybe a gate.
Yeah, and Modo actually playing it very cautiously, realizing that Voidburn on that Garrosh will be in a reasonable position to catch any member trying to start sieging down out of position, as they do get a nice flip down onto the ETC. The Polymorph is in at a good time as well. They're doing a lot of damage, but he does manage to power slide his way out of there. And all they get in the end is those 2 towers and actually quite a decent amount of damage onto that outer fort.
That was, I mean, they did siege it very, very well there. That is definitely something that they're going to need to deal with on the side of Icterus' team, and it looks like they're going to go for this invade here. Voidborn just going to get zoned out a little bit. They do get the pull, but it looks like it will not be enough. Voidborn taking quite a bit of damage here. Zul'jin kind of poking from the backline. There will be the disengage, but at this point, that's the camp picked up for Modo Gaming, and Roro in top lane dodges the swap. Looks like he'll get out.
Yeah, but Falsa is not really having the best of times in that solo lane. As we see the mage build come up, he's even actually going for updraft instead of the hammer gains that we would usually see to try and sustain himself in that solo lane. And we're starting to see the kind of pressure that this Icterus is able to put out. And as we do have Enigmatic coming up to try and get a nice gank, as we did have the flight burned already, as they do get a nice flip onto him. He is going to be put into the tower, but there's not going to be too worried about it. The damage from Lunara is doing so much work, but he does
the poison,
have
is it enough?
He does have the well tap to get himself just enough health to keep himself alive, but he is in not very good shape right now.
Yeah, and it looks like he actually canceled the Hearth, and he's going to stay in lane just to keep soaking up, because they are potentially... actually, we have Brightwing coming up here, helping out Roro. Jack just kind of helping them just push back this wave. But the other thing to consider here is that 7s are achieved on the side of Modo Gaming, and the other thing I was going to note is that Immortals were just about to pop. So, you know, they're timing this out with their camp. Very smart of them. It looks like Rhaegar is going to be doing the exact same thing. So this is going to be, you know, it'll be dealt with probably very early in the phasing, but it's still something that pulls a few of the members away, as well as the fact that 7s are achieved for Modo.
Yeah, and as Immortals are spawning, we do have both teams yet again just not trying to go for any risky invade, just going for that straight racing potential. And Modo are going to be very happy to go racing every single time it happens, as it looks like now we're starting to see a little bit of more defensive positioning from both sides, realizing that at least Icterus realizing that they can't just keep on racing and expect to get any kind of advantage out of this, especially looking at the kind of compositions that we're looking at.
So this is interesting. Okay, because I was like they can see that Lunara's in top. I was like, they should be invading, but they did side soak for that 7. Actually, Wake gonna get tossed here. Looks like he gets the polymorph. He's gonna be able to get out. Is there a swap to kinda? We do have, okay. There's just a dash, nothing too big. But at this point, it looks like they just get zoned away, and Lunara gets that clear while that camp in bottom got a fort.
Exactly, and now we just have very good positioning. The Lunara already doing damage from the top side, and it's forcing the rest of Icterus to actually back off and force them to do very defensive positioning. They were moving towards the blue side Immortal, but because of where the rest of Modo were, and they just weren't able, and they were just not getting themselves caught out. Now it's back on the other foot, and with a lot of this just easy damage from afar, it looks like Modo are just trying to slowly chip away at this Immortal, and there's really not a hell of a lot that Icterus are able to do right now without Voidborn getting that pick that they need.
The other thing to note here is that I don't know if you've ever watched just there's YouTube's videos about this of just literally showing that camp unattended in a lane will just push down a keep potentially. Looks like we actually have the Zul'jin dying here. That means that it looks like Artanis was looking for a swap maybe. The other thing I was going to note really quickly is that the way that they were positioning around that Immortal for that defense, Greymane kept just throwing a cocktail out, hitting the Immortal, and getting like a 4-man splash. He's at 12 stacks already. So just, I mean, that's huge. I mean, they're about to be 10 as well. Looks like they're going to easily burn down these the gate here and pretty much achieve 10 for this entire push.
Yeah, and with a decent amount of shield on this Immortal, they could very well start threatening keeps, because Icterus have to be very careful with how they position, because they could just get locked down by that mosh pit. And we've been seeing some very good swaps coming out from the Artanis. Should he come and help out, but we just see him just push on the bottom side, just forcing multiple points of pressure onto Icterus, and we are starting to see that shield and the health go down on that Immortal, but a lot of the damage has been done, and we're actually not seeing a very aggressive push coming out from Modo, just letting the Immortal do its thing and just taking the advantages that they have.
This is just so... It's so insane to me how they've really just pressured into this team, and it kind of shows that ETC. weight getting hit by the
damage
keep
from the cape, and he could actually go. Oh, that was a brilliant palm, but he is going to get locked down. It was a very flashy palm, but in the end, it just ends up being a kill. Just a little bit of overextension, and they just didn't have the minions there to help block a lot of those tower or the cape shots, and Icterus did end up punishing that, but they don't have 10 yet, so they still have to be very careful with how far they push forward.
Now, yeah, ETC is dead, yes, but the other thing to note is that they can't see where Artanis is, and Rhaegar's in bottom, so it's potentially, you know, they don't want to lose out here. They want to take advantage of this time and, you know, push back the lanes, get a little bit more control on the map, get closer to that 13, get closer, you know, at least, you know, even talents, even levels. And they're doing a really good job, but it looks like this camp is actually going to be picked up, and Noax is going to be just leaped upon.
Yeah, you can't really do a hell of a lot when you have all of those members diving after you, especially with that leap. Oh, a nice guillotine coming in from Soul Gym, but it's not going to be able to do too much, as a Emerald Wind is actually going to push all the members away from the point, so the camp does go over to the side of Icterus, but it's not going to be a very good fight in the end, as Jack is now stranded. And that is going to be 2 kills going over to Modo to add to the Rhaegar kill that they got just as that camp was coming up. But one good thing about that is that that is not going to be a camp that Icterus can use to pressure throughout this Immortal phase, but Modo are just going to push onto this keep.
Yeah, it looks like they're going to go ahead and do that. Now, Nox is back up. It looks like Jack will be back up in just a second, so we do have that. But they go ahead and they time this up. Ooh, I was going to say perfectly strange. Going to go ahead and use the blind. They're getting most of the members here. Slide in from ETC will not connect because the Garrosh was killed so early. Bronker diving in really deep onto that Falstad, but will not get the kill. Able to disengage, and they get the 1 kill on the Garrosh, and that's huge for them.
Absolutely. It just completely nullifies any kind of front line that Icterus has, and it makes it very hard for them to try and push into anywhere where they don't have vision. They don't know if someone's going to be just waiting for them, and they're going to have to be pushing with these squishy members, but they are just going to keep it going through. But very strong rush coming out onto these Immortals. They are going to end up going, try and do as much as they can to it, but it is going to just be a very healthy shield going over to the side of Modo Gaming.
And it looks like, yeah, they're just going to go ahead and try and take down some of that shielding. They get a half shield Immortal, but they also will be picking up this camp, which will push in the opposite lane with catapults. So that's this is actually a huge pickup for them. I really, really like this. And at this point, this is death knocking on the door. They've got their last keep kind of defense at this point.
Yeah, and it's going to be very hard for Icterus to actually hold on. They're going to have to try and make the most of their globals to try and keep these lanes clear, but we've been seeing them just kind of neglect that a little bit too much, and it could be a little bit more of a problem as they try and defend this one last keep. They are trying to take down the shield before it becomes too much of a problem, and it does see they do manage to nullify a lot of that shielding, but this is still allowing Modo to keep on pushing forward. The guillotine not doing all that much, and yeah, it looks like we're just going to have one last stand on the core for Icterus team.
And it looks like, all right, so we do have, a double pull here. We do have a throw onto Lunar. She does get the leap over. The blind does go out onto the majority of the members. Falstad will get out. Ancestral connects at the last second. Clutch healing out from both these teams. Self-cleanse out, I believe, from Garrosh there with the Indomitable. But this core is at 45%, and it is falling quick. Mosh Pit to come out onto 3 of the members. Looks like that will be core falling, and that'll be GG. Game going over to Modo Gaming.
Yeah, very well done from Modo. They had a very solid draft, and we're talking at the start of the day whether or not double support or single support is going to be the favor of the day. And sure, it's a bit early to tell, but we didn't really see the kind of pitfalls that we were used to seeing from solo support compositions. Modo were very happy to stick around in these fights, and they had a decent amount of durability, sustainability that we didn't really notice a lot of those nerfs.
No, the insane thing to me is I'm just looking at some of these numbers. So Rhaegar doing 16,000 in healing, Brightwing doing 35,000, but the Kharazim, the solo Kharazim, who by the way also took the damage, Iron Fist, I believe it is,
yeah,
at level 1. So he did 33,000 healing. So like this whole change to supports, like, and the other factor we have to consider is that, maybe this team is just that they've run this comp, they're strong with it. But it looks like we're going to instantaneously swap over to Oh My Science versus Firm Handshake. I don't know why I threw like another M into Handshake. But we'll be going over to that matchup next. I believe it's already, it looks like it's already set to go pretty much.
Alrighty, so makes it very easy for us to just jump straight into the next one.
Next one. So overall, though, how do you feel? Do you think it was a play difference potentially, or this is actually the changes coming through from the tweaks that they put onto the support?
I feel as though a decent amount of it was probably just the difference between the teams and just their level of coordination and play. Okay. We did start to see some of those changes coming into effect. Like, as you mentioned, the healing numbers of the Rhaegar, they were, to be honest, not entirely great. His clear wasn't nearly as efficient. And also the Zul'jin nerfs seem to have a decent amount of impact. We didn't really see those very big guillotines coming in. We saw like one or two and managed to land across several members, but it wasn't that massive burst damage that we see from that Zul'jin, and we just didn't really have the impact from that hero that we were seeing over the past month.
I mean, overall, in that last game, he did top the board for hero damage. So it's not that Zul'jin's out or anything. It's just, I think that there might just need to be an adjustment to play. And I think that now, I keep saying it, but it's one of those things that it might just be that's realistically how some of these heroes, maybe Blizzard is looking to maybe push them in a different direction. We're like, this isn't the intention, but you're playing it this way. Like, we want it to be played this way, but they take in the opinions of the pros, and there's, community streamers, and there's, big name streamers. So that they do pull from everybody, and they look on Reddit and everything. So obviously there is a demand for these changes. And honestly, so far it's pretty good to me.
Well, the thing is, we've had what, less than a day on this new patch. Sure, we have had a lot of people on playing on the PTR and stuff like that, just seeing how things have changed over time. But it's still a little bit early to definitively say one way or the other that one thing is good or one thing is bad. We still need a little bit more data, but
that is true.
Yeah.
The other thing to note also on the PTR, I wasn't sure because I didn't check myself, but the overall changes to the actual game with, the further zoom, towers without ammo, as well as the globe changes, I believe those were in effect with all these healer changes as well. So I think it was kind of a lot of stuff stacked on top. So even like PTR, you can still get a feel for it, but at the same time, I think there's so much in the PTR right now. It's just it's just a convoluted just bag of different things that they're trying to test.
Yeah, it's a little bit hard to see whether or not one change is making the intended impact when you have so many just thrown in simultaneously. But it's very interesting to see how it is going to develop, at least over the next couple of weeks, because usually it takes even just a few days, sometimes it takes weeks for some of these changes to really start to get figured out.
No, that is true. And the other thing that a lot of people, especially me, I look at this stuff with my own opinion on it. When I see changes to Hammer, I'm just like, well, okay, let's try sieging and trying different things. And then it's not until, and I hate to use it as an example, but once you actually see someone with way more developed mechanical skills than myself, actually play it, and you're like, oh, you're actually looking and seeing oh, there's actually subtle changes that I'm not even aware of, and seeing once HGC starts back up and we get actually Junkrat play, Alexstrasza play, a lot of these. I mean, we do have there is a tournament currently happening, but once the HGC starts, we have that nonstop. It's Friday to Sunday.
Absolutely, and to be honest, that's even where I get a lot of my ideas of what ends up being good. Just watch the players who are really good at this game, and try and emulate that as much as possible. Because if a good player is able to have good results playing it in a specific fashion, surely it's bound to work elsewhere. So
yeah,
as we were mentioning, the Junkrat and also Alexstrasza, when they come out, you're not really, or even just heroes just in general, when they come out, there's a whole bunch of varying ideas being thrown around. Okay, what's the right build? What's the right style to play them as? Do you play them as like a split push, or do you play them as like a poke damage or all in, or what kind of compositions you play them in? You see a lot of ideas coming around, but once they start hitting the competitive scene, once you start seeing teams who have actually put in the hours in a very controlled environment, then you start to say, oh, okay, so this is how you need to be drafting for these kinds of heroes. This is some of the more consistent builds and how you should be playing with them. And it's a much more consistent way of, and to be honest, quite an easy way to improve is just look at those who are better than you and see what they're doing and see how it compares to your gameplay, and then see how some of those changes can impact your own.
No, and that's the other thing to consider is like, so, and this is a discussion I've had with tons of people who I've played this game with, is you can look at a lot of that stuff and you can learn from it, but it's like there's like even like a bigger tier of just understanding, because like, yeah, you can look at it and see it, but it's like actually like